Hi, I'm Evie Knight, and welcome to my writing room. I'm going to read a chapter today out of my new debut novel, The Fourth Horror, with this gorgeous cover. The chapter I'm going to read is chapter 2. Leading up to chapter 2, the main character, Kenzie Brooks, a young girl living on the mean streets of Detroit, doing what she can to survive, which is sometimes selling drugs, sometimes selling her own body. Just to make rent, pay bills. Her mother is a drug addict. Kenzie is aware that she owes the drug dealers some money and that they're looking for her. She has come home to discover that her mother is out on the couch and has used the money to buy drugs. And now she knows that the dealers are after her, and she's very stressed. Kenzie uses self-cutting, self-mutilation in order to manage her stress, in order to relax, and she has just done that. And that's where we are, starting into chapter 2. The tension flowed out with her blood, and she was suddenly exhausted. 20 or 30 minutes lost to a nap wouldn't change the situation. Plus, the answer to the lost money would come easier to a refreshed mind. Her eyes made the decision for her, and she drifted off into a dream of Robbie and the Scribble Man. Robbie died on a Sunday. 7-year-old Kenzie was sitting on Daddy's lap watching the damn Lions handing the game away when Robbie leaped into the living room from the kitchen, carefully avoiding the burnt orange-colored carpet. The lightweight hops of his slender frame onto the furniture never bothered Daddy as much as Kenzie's baby-fatted thuds. "Kenzie, I am the Ice Lord, and I have come to your lava kingdom to make peace with you," Robbie said, smiling. Robbie never asked if he wanted to play. He just sort of started the game. Kenzie, always one for pretend, slithered off Daddy's lap onto the carpet. She tried not to get too close to it with her nose, though, because no matter what Mummy did to try to make it smell better, it still stunk like pee and cigarettes. Mummy said they'd never get a new carpet without paying more rent, so they should just try not to sniff at it. "Ice Lord," she declared in her best British accent, which was awful, "you will not last long this far into my fiery kingdom. Let us travel back to the borderlands where we can make a deal." "It's not make a deal, Kenzie, it's negotiate. That's what a queen would say," Robbie corrected. "I'm the Lava Lord, and I can say it however I want," she yelled. She did not like to be corrected. "You're a girl, you can't be a lord, freakazoid." "Don't call me that!" It wasn't her fault she had 2 different colored eyes. She stomped her foot and put her hands to her hips so Robbie could see how serious she was. "Okay, you two, Dad's trying to watch the game and Mom's sleeping. Let's keep it down, all right?" Daddy said, not too angry yet. "I can be a lord if I want to be, Robbie," Kenzie reiterated. "Kenzie girl, come here," Daddy said, grabbing her arm and pulling her to him. He leaned up off his chair. She thought he might be taking off his belt to give her a spanking, but he pulled his wallet out instead. "If I give you two some money, can I trust you to stay with your brother and off the street all the way down to the Honey Bear? You can get yourselves a couple Cokes and some chips." This was unprecedented. Pop was a huge treat, not to mention that she never got to pick out her own chips. She always got stuck with the barbecue ones that everyone else liked, but she wanted cheese puffs. She hopped up and down, nodding her head, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." She grabbed the dollar bills out of Daddy's hands without even counting them. There were a lot, that's all she knew. "Rob, this is a big deal. Can I trust you?" Daddy said. Her brother nodded and ran to get his shoes. "Rob," Dad called. He stopped and turned. "To the Honey Bear and back. That's it. No shortcuts, no messing around." "Yep, to the store and back," Robbie said. "You proved to me you be a grown-up, and maybe this can be a regular thing now that I'm back on short hauls, okay?" Robbie nodded as Kenzie pulled him to the door. She took off down the block when Robbie called out, "Hey, come here." Kenzie stopped. "It's this way," she said impatiently, marching back to her brother. "Listen, you want to go to the pawn shop instead? Jake said they got pogs, rare ones." He said it as if it was something that would interest Kenzie. She didn't collect those dumb things. He did. "But I want my pop and chips," she whined. "Look, what if I promise that next weekend, if you don't tell and Dad gives us money again, I'll give it all to you. Then you can have 2 pops and 2 bags of chips, or maybe a bag of chips and a candy bar. Just do this with me, please, Lava Lord. Can we negotiate? He held her hand and pulled her toward the street, where they would cross into the backyard of the neighbors' houses and cut through the lot filled with car motors and appliances behind the Duke of Pawn shop. Kenzie caved. She always did when it came to her big brother, who, as far as she was concerned, was better than all 4 of the Ninja Turtles combined. Before she could mourn the loss of her cherry Coke and cheese puffs, they were sneaking through the hole in the fence beside Duke of Pawn, where their parents never let them go. It's too dangerous, Kenzie girl. Bad people hang out there, her dad had told her once when they passed it and she had seen an American Girl doll in a window. He was right, of course. It was a deadly place, something Kenzie would find out in another 20 minutes. The day she saw the doll, she figured he'd only said it because they were poor and couldn't afford the toy. They weaved their way through the mechanical dinosaurs in the fenced-in yard of the Duke of Pawn. Kenzie had never understood the point of the fence. Kids played in there all the time. Even grown-ups could fit through some of the holes in it. They couldn't stop to play, though. If they weren't quick, Dad would suspect and come looking. Just before they squeezed back through the fence on the other side, Robbie stopped and grabbed Kenzie by the shoulders. Listen, if Dad asks us where our pops are, we're going to tell him that we bought ice creams instead and ate them on the way home. Robbie had the "I'm very serious" look in his eyes. She agreed. Yes, of course, that made sense. Robbie looked both ways and grabbed Kenzie's hand. The street was clear. Just as they started to run across, a bird cawed, a high-pitched and scratchy sound. Kenzie stopped to find the source and she saw him, the Scribble Man. Only he didn't have a name then. He was just a strange-looking man with a big black bird on his shoulder standing on the other side of the street. The bird lifted off and flew toward her. She tried to squeeze Robbie's hand, but it was gone. Robbie had kept going, and she was alone. Even in her dream, Kenzie saw the man as clearly as she had that day 17 years ago. He slowly stepped onto the street, following his bird. He was white, whiter than any person she had ever seen before. The hood of his sleeveless black hoodie covered most of his head. His arms were lumpy-bumpy, covered in what looked like a bunch of scribbly lines to Kenzie. The hoodie hung open, showing a bare chest beneath. The skin there was also scarred. A black strap crisscrossed his white skin, and an hourglass hung from the belt it all connected to. His bird was weird, too. It had flown close enough that she could see its eyes, milky white, both of them, just like her one ugly eye. Robbie was almost to the other side of the road, so intent on his pogs that he hadn't noticed the bird or the strange man. And Kenzie was so transfixed on the 2 newcomers that she didn't see the car come flying around the corner. Adult, dreaming Kenzie, heard the screeching tires that little Kenzie thought was the bird again. In the slow-motion dream replay, she had time to smell the acrid stink of burnt rubber on asphalt before hearing the thud of Robbie's body rolling beneath the front tire and the sickening pop of his skull giving way to the pressure of the rear one. Dreaming Kenzie's heart pounded as her child self finally tore her attention away from the man advancing toward her brother. Robbie's crushed and bloodied face stared blindly at the scribble-covered man who bent over him. This close, Kenzie could see that the scribbly lines were actually that fancy writing that grown-ups used, mixed in with the kind of writing that Robbie did. The bird landed at her feet, as if it too were just a passerby witnessing the tragedy unfold. "Is Robbie gonna be okay? Can you help him?" Kenzie asked the man. He looked up at her and opened his mouth, like he was going to answer, but then closed it again. The bird hopped over and peered down at Robbie's smashed face as if trying to figure out what the boy once looked like. "Did you come to take us away?" Kenzie asked. It was the sort of thing kids in her neighborhood were taught to expect. He didn't answer her. The bird pecked at Robbie's face near where his forehead should have been. She watched, fascinated, as it pulled a silvery web like a gypsy moth's nest out of Robbie. It was a neat magic trick. The scribble man opened the top of the hourglass that hung from his belt and dropped the cotton candy swirl into it. It slipped through the top glass and lay coiled up in a shimmery pile on the bottom. "What about me?" Kenzie asked. "I don't know," he said. His voice was rough and scratchy. "Are you going to put me in that glass too?" "I don't think so. Guess you outsmarted your fate." He smiled. It looked strange on his face, but it made Kenzie smile too. "No one has ever seen me coming before." "Well, you're kind of dressed funny if you don't want people to notice you," Kenzie said. Then she remembered her brother. "Is Robbie dead?" She had a fish once that died, so she knew it meant going away and never coming back. and that made her sad. But maybe it wasn't the same with people, though. Yes, I'm afraid so, the man said. But you need to go home, quick. I don't know what is going to happen now. But what should I tell Daddy? She asked. 7-year-old Kenzie was too mesmerized by the conversation to notice what dreaming Kenzie had all the time to see. The world around them had frozen. Time stood still. Where there should have been a crowd gathering around the dead child, no one moved. A fuzzy gray rabbit's foot dangled from around the scribble man's neck. It looked so soft and comforting. Kenzie reached for it, but jumped when the giant bird squawked and took off into the air. She followed its course as it swooped around behind her and around so that she had to scramble backward to keep it from knocking her over. The bird grabbed the foot in its sharp claws and broke it free from the scribble man's neck. Another loop brought the bird once more behind and then in front of Kenzie. It dropped the foot onto the pavement beside her before perching again on its master's shoulder. Do you think it will protect her, Enoch? The man asked his bird. Kenzie surreptitiously stroked the fur with one finger. I suppose it's yours now, he said to the little girl. It's your talisman. It once belonged to a very strong woman just like you. Kenzie hugged the foot tightly to her chest before looking down at what was once her brother. The sight of it was so upsetting that it brought Kenzie out of the dream. She never saw exactly how her child self made it home that day. Her conscious adult brain refused to remember it. Even the days that followed the funeral, when Dad left for good and Mom OD'd on her pills, were nothing more than a haze of pain. After that, 11 years of memories worth keeping filled only the small knapsack Kenzie carried between her mom's and foster homes. Now she was back with her mother out of a necessity, and she feared it would be the death of her.